So I need to braze the brake shoes onto the end here. First off, because this has been what's called hot roll, that means it was bright red when they formed this metal. It's got what's called a mill scale on it. This is sort of black carbon, and I have to file that off so the braze will cut through to the clean metal, and I do that with a file. Just along where the brake block needs to sit. Now, I've cleaned up the burrs where I filed and sawed this off. Just cleaned it all up, and then I do the same with the backing on this brake block or shoe. See, it's not that much, it's enough. Now I need to fit the blocks to the shaft, and first of all I've got to lay it out on the wheel, which I do like this. Get the shaft in the center here, check out the position on the flange. I'm looking at this little indentation here. See where the brake block fits sort of comfortably on the tread of the tyre. I just mark it with a black marker first, like that, and then with the scriber on that side, same on this side. And those are my positions. Now for the fun bit. I have a pre-formed piece of wire here. I then fit the brake block into the pre-formed wire with a little bit of a straddle, because it needs to be tight. I don't want it moving. Like so. I then fit the brake shaft through here. And you'll see it should line up with that small mark I've made, the edge of it. The other thing is, because it's being held against a square edge here, it lies square to the shaft, the curve. And then finally, I just check the squareness of it there against the bottom of a square edge, and that's cool there. So now it's held in position. I can braze it up. Let's go and braze this up. So brazing is slightly different than silver soldering. It's actually done with a brass rod. Silver solder is done with a silver tin and a few other little things added to it. This is much higher temperature, but I'm still going to use my easy flow flux on it. It seems to work. So this is a brass brazing welding rod. It's got a little bit of flux on it, but that's going to be burnt off pretty quick. So let's start the torch up. There you go. goes. Don't worry that the wire seems to come up. Don't worry that the wire seems to come up. Nice and red. Don't worry that the wire glows nice and red. It's not going to let go. Seems to have done it. It moved a few times. I hope it's not moved right off course. Now the other end of the brake shaft. Brazing's pretty straightforward. It's actually, you don't need to be clean as you do with silver soldering. It flows pretty easily once you get it up to temperature, and it seems to work okay with all kinds of fluxes. You can just test the fluxes as you try it for yourself. Complete. I let the cherry red disappear from the metal before I cooled it off with water. And just carefully touch it and make sure the cooling off's happened. Take the wire off, and then I just give it a quick rub over with a steel brush. Now for a little bit of a clean up on the brake beams. What I do now is a bit of fettling, and that is fitting these brake beams in to the slots here where they're going to operate from. Now I've made sure, you can see this here, I've made sure that I've cleaned off the braze so that I'm not going to be jamming it into those slots, because they need to be fairly loose in those slots. So let's put it in. Now you can see they're riding nicely on the tires of the wheels here. The spacing's good. What I need to do is to relieve this part here, because it's going to touch the flange. So either side I just have to relieve it a little bit. The other thing I need to do is actually just cut back on these slots a little bit, so to give the brake beam a little bit more movement. It's got no movement at the moment, as you see. It's got plenty of space at the back of the slots, but I need to cut it back here so that they can ride further back and they can release properly. Plus I'm going to put a brass shim in here, which is like the wearing surface that I can easily replace as it wears out. Here you can see I've made a much bigger curve. If you compare it to the other one, I've made a much bigger curve in there to allow the flange to run, and that's just with filing in the vise. So if I put it on the wheel, you can see there just that it's giving me plenty of clearance. The next brazing job, this hole here and this beam is where the operating mechanism pulls the shafts together over the bogie. And I need to make this, but I don't need to make these pieces because this is made out of zinc, as I've said before, and in fact I don't need the steel. Just the flat steel has a lot more strength than this has. I'll show you on the bogie that's been assembled here. You can see where this pivot point and this pivot point are on these little squares here, which are, interestingly enough, as you see, at an angle. The beams are at an angle here to coincide with the wheels at this end. Okay, the beams are flat and square with this top beam, which is part of the operating system. And I need to make these squared off pieces with pivot centers in them. Okay, I'll show you how I do that.